Let me tell you something that stopped me in my tracks this week. You know, when you read a story you've heard hundreds of times, but suddenly it hits different. That's what happened when I went back to the Samaritan woman at the well. Hi everyone, I'm Yvonne, and welcome to Wing It with Thought, where we unpack scripture and how it speaks to us in our modern day lives. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss any videos. Disclaimer, I'm going to be condensing the verses, but I'll put the full verses which I am going to be reading off. Now back to the video. What I love about the story is how it's intertwined with the Old Testament and has so much history. And let me confess, I always fall in the trap of looking at the Bible in isolation and wondering why sometimes stories feel so radical. But when you trace through the thread, you'll see just how intentional God is. And that word intentional, honestly, is a pillar of my spiritual growth. So before we get to the Samaritan woman, we need to go back, way back into time. Sorry, I had to do that. I'm such a 90s girl, I couldn't resist. So we're going back to the Old Testament, when the 12 tribes split. Judah and Benjamin in the south, and the other 10 tribes in the north. And here's the thing. The northern tribes were blocked from Jerusalem. So Jerusalem was the place where people went to worship. They couldn't go to the temple anymore, the one place God had chosen for his presence. So the other 10 tribes built their own worship. 1 Kings chapter 12 verses 28 and 31. The king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." Jeroboam built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. Now, let's pause. Why does it matter that they weren't Levites? Because the Levites were Moses' tribe. In Exodus, God appointed them as priests. They didn't get the land like the other tribes. Their inheritance was God himself. They were set apart to carry the ark, teach the law, and offer sacrifices. It was a sacred calling. So when the north just made anybody a priest, that was a counterfeit worship from day one. And then came Assyria. They invaded, exiled the Israelites from the north, and mixed the people with other nations. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 16 and 29. The king of Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites. Nevertheless, each national group made its own gods in the several towns where they settled, and set them up in the shrines the people of Samaria had made. So Samaria became a blended, broken identity, not fully Jewish, but not fully pagan. There were half-truths everywhere. Fast forward 700 years later, John chapter 4. Not quite modern days, but we're in Jesus' time now. A Samaritan woman comes to draw water. And here's the detail. She comes in the middle of the day. Women usually went in the cool of the morning. I mean, have you ever been in that Mediterranean heat? Midday is brutal. So why is she there at the afternoon? Because she's an outcast. Too much shame, too much history, too many whispers. And who's waiting for her? Jesus. John chapter 4 verses 9. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew. I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" That's her basically saying, wait a minute. You're not even supposed to be talking to me. You Jews see us as unclean, and you are a man talking to me, a woman. But Jesus breaks every barrier: gender, history, religion, shame. John chapter 4, verses 22 and 26. Salvation is from the Jews. I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Sis, can we stop here? One short encounter, 15 minutes maybe, and yet this woman walks away completely transformed. That's the power of meeting God himself at a well. And who Does he pick? Not Nicodemus, the teacher, not a synagogue leader, not someone respected, but her, the most broken, the most despised, the most dismissed. John chapter 4, verses 29. She then says, "Come see a man who's told me everything I've ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" And the result? John chapter 4, 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. Do you see the string here? From false priests to the true high priest, from counterfeit worship to worship in spirit and truth. And here's what lands with me. We are that Samaritan woman. We're confused, half knowing, sometimes blocked from worship by man-made barriers, ashamed of our past. But Jesus meets us there, in the heat of the day, in the ordinary. He sees all of us and still says, "I came for you." That's gospel. Not that we climbed up to him, but that he came down to us. And one encounter with him leaves such a mark, you can't keep it to yourself. So sis, if he could use her, the outcast, the silenced, the broken, how can he use you and me? Because Jesus still says, "I am he." Now, if you're still here watching, I suggest you just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Till next time, stay blessed.